Welcome everyone, welcome to a new market update, and today we're going to discuss a BitConnect and we're going to discuss the altcoins as the hype and the sentiment are still on a low. While as I discussed yesterday, we might actually see a very good buy opportunity for Bitcoin given the stock to flow model. If you've missed that video, don't forget to check my profile or my YouTube page. I've posted that yesterday. But the altcoins, they are lagging behind. And the best case, what we're seeing right now is that they are bouncing with Bitcoin. And that's what you want to see. But what is Bitcoin going to do here? As the questions regarding a short squeeze are heavily there, but also the death cross still. Topics we're going to discuss today. So before we're going to continue, do not forget to subscribe beneath and also like this update if you enjoy the content. So let's get to the chart in itself, in which we can see that we do have this death cross getting close. I think it's not easy to avoid this anymore. Maybe if we pump all the way through it, we might be avoiding it, but in general the most likely case is that this is going to be acting as resistance for now, through which we can derive points of interest that have to be holding. And what is the most likely level that we want to see holding for Bitcoin in general? That's this entire block on the daily time frame. So from that perspective, you might want to get a sideways action before we start to break above the two moving averages. If we do break above the moving averages, most likely we'll get a heavy short squeeze, and then the next obvious resistance zone that I'm pointing at or watching is the area around 48k, as that was the breaker before it started to fall south. So this is the area that you want to see holding in general for Bitcoin. That is the critical breaker for now, as that is just the block before we started to continue rallying to the upside. So in order to have the upwards momentum, you want to get those crucial levels to become support again, because then you can continue grinding. And the moment that it can go sideways or it just grinds Bitcoin, you can assume that altcoins are going to follow suit. Because why did they actually drop down heavily during this crash? They started to fall south the moment that this crash on Wednesday happened. Before that, they didn't really crash at all. Out of panic, they started to fall south as well, because Bitcoin was crashing way deeper than most of the people were anticipating in the markets. And through that, it's very likely that altcoins are going to get back to their momentum the moment that Bitcoin is just going to consolidate here. And the best nature for altcoins to move is when Bitcoin consolidates and doesn't have to be volatile as it is regularly. So what are we expecting from the altcoins to happen? Well, most likely they are just going to continue moving upwards. And I'm just getting link up here as Chainlink is currently in support zone. The chart itself looks disastrous. It doesn't look great, but we are holding a critical support zone here through which we can continue making the momentum to the upside. So we can see that we are flipping, or we are actually bouncing, while you would expect altcoins to get crushed in the Bitcoin pair when Bitcoin was moving upwards. So the longer Bitcoin stays sideways here, the more likely altcoins are going to do well. Until the moment comes that Bitcoin is eager for the next breakout, and I think the next breakout will probably be the short squeeze towards that region at 48k. And in that case, probably altcoins will have a corrective move in the Bitcoin pair once again. But we can see that we are making higher lows on Chainlink. We are seeing continuation in general on the altcoins at this stage, through which we also can see that there is most likely a further upwards bounce to be happening on them, because Bitcoin is at this range here, while altcoins are still way down beneath that level. Also, Ethereum is not at the resistance zone yet, while Bitcoin is actually already here, showing that altcoins still have to follow suit. So Bitcoin had the first run. Now you want to see altcoins continue that momentum as well. And if that is happening, then they can go back to the levels pre-crash phase. So then they grind back up to the levels that they were prior to the actual crash. And if you look at Ethereum USDT and you zoom out a little bit, you can see that those crashes that we have witnessed previously they can continue running to the upside. So in the previous crash in February and also in the one in April, you saw that critical levels were still holding as support. And as long as that is happening, the upwards momentum can actually continue to take place. So in this case, if we consolidate and make another higher low through which this is the critical area that we should be holding at right now, it is very likely that you're going to see a run up to the next levels of resistance. So which is 33 and even 37 are resistances before we are going to assume that we are getting a corrective move and then continuation to the upside. So it's right now, if Bitcoin is going to consolidate, given the fact that we are still below those moving averages and below a few very important resistances, which are those moving averages, we can assume that altcoins are going to have that momentum. And that is also a signal for the Bitcoin dominance chart, which is currently just acting and making a lower high. I'm not saying that we should be using this as a price indicator or as a tradable asset, but in general, the critical resistance zone is this around 50%. And if you look at this chart, you could be arguing that we are getting a further upwards momentum on the dominance, but this is mainly derived by Ethereum against Bitcoin, as that is the biggest asset in general. But if it's not going to take place like this, we can have another big move to the downside. And that is going to continue making that momentum on altcoins in general. And if you look at Ethereum, Bitcoin, and if you go back in history, and I have to use another one, if you go back in history on Ethereum, Bitcoin, you can see that those consolidative periods have been happening in the previous cycles as well. So very comparable is this period here in 2016, after which another big run happened. But also in 2017, we've had a period of consolidation before the new impulse wave started. Knowing that most likely Bitcoin will not be making a very impulsive move, given the fact that there are so many resistance on the upside and it's so far away from a new all-time high, most likely this is the period where altcoins start outperforming Bitcoin, unless Bitcoin starts to make very volatile moves. But as you can see, we are currently just making another consolidative period for Ethereum in general, through which the assumption is there that we can have another big impulse wave. Unless Ethereum, Bitcoin is going to lose some of those critical levels that we have discussed. And right now, Ethereum is just holding the critical level, and the critical resistance on the upside is also there. So what should you do? Are altcoins going to continue? I think they will, but you have to be watching Bitcoin to see whether they are going to make a very volatile move. The longer that Bitcoin is going to act sideways at this stage, the more likely altcoins are going to continue their run and get back to the levels pre-crash phase. So that's the update of today. I'll be back tomorrow with a fresh new one, and don't forget to subscribe beneath.